Hey, it's Alexis, and in today's video, I'm going to be doing the A to Z tag. I have the questions written down on a piece of paper, so if you hear me turning the page, that's what it is. I will put the questions down in the description if you want to make your own tag video. So let's get started. So for the letter A, the question is, an author that I've read the most books from. And I currently am tied with 2 authors. So I've read 8 books by Lynn Painter, and I've read 8 books by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. But I guess technically you could say I've read the most by Lynn Painter because I've also read 9 of her like extra chapters or little short story things that she posts. So I guess that counts as more books, but I want to say that they're equal. I read 8 books by both of them. For B, the question is the best sequel ever. In my opinion, that would be The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I've really enjoyed the first one. So this is the second book to the Inheritance Games. I really enjoyed the first one, but I feel like this one was just like 10 times better because this one, you already know the characters now, so you just jump right into the story. And I absolutely loved this one. I don't know. You let me know what your favorite sequel is, but I think it's the Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. The question for C is, which book are you currently reading? I'm currently reading Fairy Tale by Stephen King. And I still don't know how I feel about this one. I am on page 50, which I know barely into it because Stephen King's books are long. I'm pretty sure this book is like 2 pages off of being 600. This book so far is good, but I'm more kind of confused, I guess you could say, on what's happening. Just, I guess, stay tuned for my thoughts on this one. For D, the question is your drink of choice while reading. And that honestly just depends on either my mood or what I'm eating around the time that I'm reading this book. So I really enjoy just water. I know that's really weird and lame probably, but I drink a lot of water. But I also really like to drink sweet tea and strawberry acai lemonade from Starbucks. So those are probably my 3 go-tos when I'm reading. But again, it just depends on like what I'm eating at the time. For E, the question is, do you prefer e-readers or physical books? I used to be only a physical book person until I bought a Kindle. And now I just really want to read on my Kindle. But I try to read physical books if they're paperback and if they're like 300 pages or less. Otherwise, I want to use the Kindle for hardcovers and books that are really, really long. So like this one, I'm currently reading it on my Kindle because it's really heavy when you hold it and I just don't want to sit there and read in this physical book. So I guess to me, it just depends on what book I'm reading, but I do like both. The question for F is, which fictional character would you have dated in high school? I want to say that I probably would have either dated Justin from Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez or Win from Happy Place by Emily Henry. I just feel like I would have had a really good connection and relationship with both of those characters. The question for G was, what book are you glad you gave a chance? That would be The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. So I thought that this book sounded really interesting when I read the back of it. So it's about this guy named Aiden who wakes up 8 days in a row, but he's like in the body of somebody else, and he has to figure out who the killer is to stop, I guess, reliving it over and over again. And when I first started listening to the audiobook of this, I was bored, not gonna lie. I thought I was gonna stop reading it in like chapter 2 or 3. And then around chapter 5, I wanna say, maybe it was 6, the plot just picked up and I was so invested. So I'm glad I like stuck around and gave this a chance. I would highly recommend this book. I think it's really good. For H, it was a hidden gem book. And I'm going to say Picking Daisies on Sundays by Leanne Sincotti. At first, I thought that this was just a silly little romance. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm in the mood for. But this one had so much like emotional depth to it. And I would highly recommend reading this one. I think that it is really, really good. And some of these quotes about grief in this book, they punched me, I guess you could say. And I feel like everybody needs to read something like that every once in a while. So I would highly recommend this one. The question for I is an important moment in your reading life. I remember the first book that I read like by myself was probably the Junie B. Jones books. I don't know if you guys remember those. But I was like, that was my favorite series when I first started reading. I read every single one of them, and then I like started reading like The Magic School Bus, and when I got older, the Click series and stuff like that. And then when I was probably 5th or 6th grade, I started getting made fun of for reading, so I stopped reading. And then when my dad passed away in 2019, I was trying to find something to help me kind of, I guess you could say, cope, and I picked up reading again. So I feel like that's kind of like what shaped my reading life. And now I love it. It's all I ever want to do. The question for Jay is a book that you've just finished reading, and that would be A Fragile Enchantment by Alison Saff. I've been listening to the audiobook of this, or I guess I was. I finished it. I was listening to the audiobook of this, and I don't know if I actually liked it or not. I feel like if you really are into Regency era books that you might like this, but I just thought that it was different than what I was expecting it to be, so I don't know like how I fully felt about it. But yeah, I just finished this one. For Kay, the question is a kind of book that you will never read, and I'm gonna have to say horror. Like I've said before, I'm a big baby when it comes to scary things. Like, my sister is obsessed with scary movies and has asked me multiple times to watch them with her, and I refused every time because I know I'm gonna start crying. So I don't think that I could do a horror book because I feel like it would do the same thing to me that a movie would. So I can't do it. For Elle, the question is the longest book that you've ever read. I want to say Fairy Tale by Stephen King, but I'm not finished with it yet. So it has to be Things We Hide from the Light by Lucy Score, which is only 4 pages shorter than Fairy Tale by Stephen King, so it's basically the same thing. This is book 2 in the Knock 'Em Out series by Lucy Score. This was not my favorite. I've only read the first 2 so far in the series, but this one, I kind of hated it. I feel like this book, okay, I love Lucy Score, so I don't really like feel right saying this, but I don't feel like this book should have been written. It's kind of terrible. Okay, next question. For M, the book that gave you a major book hangover. So I picked 2 for this one. I picked a good book hangover and a bad book hangover. So the bad one would have to be The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. I read this on Libby, so I don't have a physical copy of it, but this book, I heard a lot of people say that it was really good and that they really enjoyed it. And I ended up giving it 1.5 stars, and it was kind of terrible. So it's about these people that go on this book retreat, and they are visiting this very famous author during this retreat. And I think it's like a month or something long. And while they're there, their goal is to write a whole book. Some weird things were happening the entire book. It just like progressively kept getting weirder and weirder. I didn't like it. And then the good book hangover that I've had was when I finished reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This book I thought about forever afterward. I read this for the first time in September of 2023, and it was literally the only book I read that entire month because I could not pick up another one after it. I just couldn't do it. So, and then I kept thinking about it all year this year until I read it again in July or August, whichever month I read it. This book is so amazing. If you haven't read it, I would highly recommend you do so. Then the next question is N, which is the number of bookcases that you own. In this room, there's 4 of them that have books on them, plus a book cart. But in my entire house, we have 7 bookcases and a book cart. But only 4 bookcases have books on them. For O, the question was, one book that you read multiple times. And a book that I read multiple times would be Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom. I would recommend this book to everybody. So this is a memoir that Mitch wrote about his Professor Morrie. who sadly passes away in this book. But this is like life advice and things that Maury's giving to Mitch. And I feel like everybody can relate to some of these lessons, I guess. So I would recommend reading this if you haven't already. I think it's very fantastic. For P, it's a preferred place to read. I really want to get like a reading chair or a beanbag or something, but since I don't currently have one, my favorite places to read are in my bed or on my couch. But I really want to get like a soft, comfortable place to read that's like in here with my books. For Q, the question is a quote that inspires you or a quote that gives you feels. The quote that I'm picking is going to be from Happy Place by Emily Henry. And it says, I want my life to be like making pottery. I want to enjoy it while it's happening, not just for where it might get me eventually. And I feel like this quote is kind of inspiring to you if you're one of those people that are just, I have to do this for my future, and you're not really worried about what's going on right now. If you're worried about the past or you're worried about the future and you're not worried about the present, I feel like this quote should resonate with you to make you realize that your entire life is important. For R, it's a reading regret. And one of my reading regrets is reading the book Layla by Colleen Hoover. This is probably the worst book that I've ever read in my life. Yeah, do not read it. I would never, ever recommend it. I wouldn't even recommend it to my worst enemy. Don't read it. For S, it's a series that you've started and you need to finish. And that would be the Villain series by Serena Valentino. I read the first 2 books in the series. There's 11 books out in this series so far, and I read 2. So I need to get on this. For T, the question is 3 of your all-time favorite books. And this was really hard for me to narrow down to 3 because I've loved so many books. But I think my top 3 would be The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, and Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. But I also have some other ones that I really enjoyed, like Happy Place by Emily Henry, The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. There's just so many good books out there. For you, the question is, I'm an unapologetic fangirl of these authors. Lynn Painter, Jennifer Lynn Barnes, Ali Hazelwood, and Abby Jimenez. I think those are my current top 4 authors. For V, the question is a book that you are very excited for the release of. And for me, that is Voice of the Ocean by Kelsey and Peach K. This book is going to be a retelling of The Little Mermaid, and it releases in April of 2025. And I'm so excited for it. For W, the question was, what is your worst habit? And I'm going to take this as my worst reading habit, and that would be not DNFing books. I, this year, started to DNF more. I think I've DNF'd 3 books this year that I just couldn't get into. But sometimes there are books that I should DNF that I continue reading. You know, like Layla. Should not have done that. And then another one is not going to bed. I'm just staying up reading books because I need my sleep. So I guess those are 2 really bad habits that I have. For X, the question says, X marks the spot. Pick out the 27th book on your shelf. Well, I'm going to use my book cart instead of my shelf because it's closer to me. So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. So it looks like the 27th book on my book cart is Mad Honey by Jodi Picoult and Jennifer Finney Boylan. Haven't read it, obviously. It came from my book cart. But yeah, for Y, it is your last purchased book. For me, that would be Games Untold by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is some short stories in the same universe as the Inheritance Games, but I don't think that it's like a continuation of it. So I think that you're okay to read this on its own. I don't know. I haven't read it yet. I'll let you know for sure once I do, but this was my most recent purchase. But one thing that bugged me about this, I don't know if you can see it very well, but the dust jacket is shorter than the book. Like, look at that. And it's like that on both ends. So that's kind of driving me crazy. But yes, the last book I purchased. And then for Z, the last question, is a book that kept you up late reading. So that would be The Grandest Game by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I'm pretty sure I stayed up until like 1 or 2 in the morning to finish this. My husband was kind of upset because he was trying to go to sleep. But that would be my Z book. So yeah, this was actually pretty fun to do this A to Z book tag. I would recommend you do it if you're into that. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.